Anybody else?
I'll be
Microphone?
happy.
Who has?
Here, one here on your right. I'll be
Okay,
happy
let me go to this
be
side.
number 2.
We'll go back and forth. That way I'll get some of
Yeah,
my
you get some
workout.
exercise. Hi. When my counselor in 1992 told me to get the book Full Catastrophe Living, I got it. And I thought, this title, this man is never going to sell more than 10 books. My question is, why is our mind set up in the way that makes it so complicated to be in reality rather than in this craziness?
Why do you want to know? Or even, who wants to know? In other words, why are you asking that question? Because that's really very much thought-based, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, so what's underneath that? Where's the question actually coming from?
Well, I see evolution, and it has served most species that have survived pretty well.
Yeah.
So why do we have this serious duality? I don't know. Maybe it's my ego asking. I don't know.
So frame the duality a little bit more?
It's almost like we're schizophrenic in 2 different countries, different pieces.
So
and
let's keep
our
it
task
personal.
is to hold.
So I'm schizophrenic.
I'm schizophrenic, perhaps.
And you're feeling pulled apart?
Yes.
Okay, can you say something about the pulling or the...
Well, it almost feels like part of me has to police the other part.
So the doing and the being?
Yes.
So to speak?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and you want me to explain why that is?
Well, I thought maybe...
Or would you prefer how to liberate yourself from it? I'm not going to explain either, but...
Well, okay, if... Yes, liberate myself from it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm guessing that's why you're actually here. Is because some deep impulse is to liberate yourself from that sense of being eaten alive, pulled apart. We have so many different ways to talk about the stress in our lives and being, bandied from pillar to post, so to speak. And this close to living a satisfying life and yet not feeling that we're living a satisfying life. Would you say that that's fair?
No, I have a great life, a very satisfying life. But I do see all this mayhem all around me. And I realize that I've learned that the only way to get to be a contributor in peace would be to heal the split.
Heal the
split. Why is it even there in the first place? What's the evolutionary purpose of it?
Yeah, well, a lot of people write about that stuff, and we are primed to, in some sense, go with our fear because fear can save your life.
Yes.
So
yeah.
If there's a kind of selection pressure for being very, very sensitive to whatever forces that are out there that could destroy you in a second, like because you're lunch for them, then you tend to sort of fall into seeing things in a particular way, or it expresses itself in the body like that. But we have other aspects of ourselves as well that may be critical to the future evolution of the species, and for that matter, the future well-being of the planet as a whole. And so what we're talking about is actually recruiting those dimensions of our being to actually attenuate some of the evolutionary instincts that we may have for self-preservation, where our definition of self is much, much too small. Okay. So that would be one way of thinking about it. But again, we're now in the realm of philosophy and thinking.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
and even good thinking is still thinking. And so what we're really here practicing is kind of not to suppress thinking. I mean, then we'd just be really stupid.
Yes.
Thinking is really great, but have you ever gotten into bed at night and then your thinking just won't let you alone? Anybody ever have that problem? So we become such great thinkers that we're like prisoners of our own thinking. And we have, and Katie's work is a kind of prime example of it. It's like you create a whole universe in your head with, all its own laws, and they're all wrong. And then you believe them, and then it takes a while to actually realize that it's not true. Well, that's liberating. That's liberating. That can happen in an instant, just recognizing thoughts and letting them self-liberate. Because you see that it's a thought, that it's not the truth. But it requires exercising a certain muscle that takes work. It takes energy. It's hard work to cultivate, to practice non-doing in a certain way. And on the other hand, it's, as I was saying, it's effortless and it's just play. So we're learning how to tune, in a way, evolutionarily speaking. We've got this instrument. We're just beginning to learn how to use it. There's not that many generations. 10,000 years since the last ice age, or 12,000 years. If you divide by whatever you think a generation is, say 30 years conventionally, 400, 500, 600 generations of human beings since since all of history and what we call civilization. That's nothing. I mean, microbiologists grow that many generations overnight in a test tube. We're like in our infancy as a species, but we've gotten so precocious that we have the capacity to destroy ourselves and a lot of other species and dysregulate the planetary, equilibria like nobody's business. And we need to. That's part of mindfulness. It's part of waking up. But so there's no end to working with our own sort of tendencies to be imprisoned in habits and then breaking those out. Yeah. And just to say, my publisher had the same thought that you can't put the word catastrophe in a title. Nobody wants to buy a book, with the word catastrophe in the title. So just parenthetically, I worked for 2 years to try to get rid of that title. Because I thought he knows better than I knew. I couldn't get rid of that title. That title is like the title of that book, and it turns out that it's sold a few more than 10 copies. Yeah, and actually, if you could say, I started the stress reduction clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center in 1979. If you think back to 1979, any of you here who could think back to 1979, the first thing you'd say is, 1979, what stress? I mean, they had stress in 1979? Compared to now, I mean, it's unbelievable. But, if the title, when that book came out in 1990, Full Catastrophe Living, I think everybody would recognize that we are far more into the full catastrophe of the human condition now in a certain way than we were in 1990 or in 1979 or in 1879 for that matter. It's like we're like the autoimmune disease of the planet, Earth, the human species, Homo sapiens sapiens. We're the vector of the disease and also the first victim. So, but what if we wake up? Then you can write yourself a restraining order, a la Katie. Question your own coordinate system, your own maps. And it's liberating not like after 50 years of meditating in a cave. It's liberating in that moment. You can see it. You see it on people's faces, in people's bodies. And the same when we're practicing, sitting. It's like moment by moment by moment. The Tibetans talk about thoughts self-liberating. Have you ever touched a soap bubble with your finger? What happens? So let's say the finger is like your awareness. You have awareness. You're resting in awareness, the way I was sort of guiding that meditation. And in the field of awareness, a thought bubble arises. Okay? And the awareness is like the finger. It just so nothing is done, nothing happens. It's not like, get that bubble. It's just, it self-liberates. Like, say, coming off the bottom of a pot of boiling water and just going poof at the surface. So if you don't take my word for it, watch your thoughts in that way and see whether even very, very heavy-duty thoughts, which we all have, and for very good reasons, Because there's just a huge amount of suffering going on, not out there, in here, for all of us, in one form or another. And we have all these narratives about how it is, in some sense, how it needs to be for me to be happy, or for Kate to not be an alcoholic, or for whatever it is.